A precedent for president. The 2008 U.S. presidential election. How did its outcome reflect the changing attitudes towards the African American race in the United States? Well, since its birth, America has had a long history of racism and discrimination against African Americans. The very first slaves to come to the American colonies in 1619 came on Dutch ships from Africa. From then onwards, the enslavement and discrimination of African Americans was an unmistakable feature of U.S. history. Throughout the 18th and 19th centuries, African Americans were at the bottom of the social pyramid in American society. Events such as the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendments elevated African Americans' social status, but they were still not equal in all terms and still faced much discrimination. The age-old battle against racism has been seen prominently throughout U.S. history. Jim Crow laws in the late 1890s. Plessy v. Ferguson court case of 1896. The infamous lynching phenomenon, along with many other forms of racism and segregation. However, the civil rights movement, starting in the Reconstruction era, and influential abolitionists worked hard to secure the rights of African Americans. Some examples are the Montgomery bus boycotts, marches, and speeches given by prominent abolitionists such as Martin Luther King Jr. Fast forward to the 20th century. The long-term effects of the battle against slavery, racism, and discrimination are still felt to this day. Yet a significant change has occurred since the pre-Civil War era. The 2008 U.S. presidential election occurred on November 4th. The Republican nominee, John McCain, was defeated by the Democratic nominee, Barack Obama. His victory speech was heard around the world.
If there is anyone out there who still doubts that America is a place where all things are possible, who still wonders if the dream of our founders is alive in our time, who still questions the power of our democracy, tonight is your answer.
The win was significant in history and different from all of the previous U.S. presidential elections for one simple reason. Barack Obama was the first African American to become president. Obama won the Electoral College, popular vote, a prominent figure in history. For centuries, the U.S. White House had never hosted a Black president until this election. Obama won the most votes ever won by a president, 69.5 million, nearly 53% of all votes. This proves that America's attitude towards African Americans had undergone significant change since the first slave ships arrived on its shores. First through the abolitionist movement, then through the civil rights movement. Achievements won for the freedom and rights of African Americans prove this. America was slowly but surely changing its attitude towards race, towards African Americans. From the bonds of slavery to the White House, white supremacy and racism slowly dissolved. While the large amounts of minority groups may have played a part, the election proved to be a stepping stone towards a more colorblind America.